what it means to our national security to give up our soft power. We're no longer helping struggling nations in Africa. China, or worse, terrorists, are filling the vacuum. I wonder how many of those African countries will be named in next year's threat assessment. Thanks to DOJ, the men we paid to guard the most vicious ISIS terrorists in the world in Syria walked off the job. Do you think we'll see their names in this document next year? Elon Musk fired the people who maintain our nuclear weapons. Does that feel like a threat to you? Apparently, all of this mayhem is cheered by the President of the United States and by 20-somethings with laptops and nicknames like Big Balls. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that Moscow and Beijing and Tehran and Pyongyang cannot believe their luck.
Donald Trump and his entire cabinet were absolutely torn apart today on national television, and they certainly deserved every bit of it. These individuals are completely unqualified for some of the most crucial positions in America, and it seems they don't even care that their actions have jeopardized the lives of American soldiers and our national security due to their sheer incompetence. These people are either indifferent or too oblivious to recognize their failures, but the rest of the country can see it clearly. This is why Donald Trump's media supporters, particularly Fox, are desperately trying to cover it up. We saw this firsthand today when Fox abruptly cut away from a hearing, trying to shield Trump and Pete Hegseth from the severe blow they were dealt. Before diving deeper into this, though, if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, it would mean a lot to me. Now, let's start by looking at how it all began with Democratic ranking member Jim Hines absolutely dismantling Donald Trump.
As the chairman said, this hearing is an important opportunity for our committee and the American people to hear directly from the senior leadership of the intelligence community about the threats that our nation faces. I read the unclassified report, and I found a lot of continuity in the IC's assessment about critical threats to our national security compared to last year's assessment. The IC continues to see threats from our principal adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. I must say, though, that after these last 2 months, I'm worried that the call may be coming from inside the House. This report calls Russia, and I quote, an enduring potential threat to U.S. power, presence, and global interests. But as far as I can tell, we're now on Team Kremlin. We vote with them and against our allies in the United Nations. We humiliate President Zelensky in the Oval Office. The president's chief Russian negotiator, Steve Witkoff, is repeating Russian talking points and participating on a madcap signal chat about an attack on Yemen while inside Russia. USAID is gone, and with it, all American soft power. If I had time, I would ask the generals at this table about what it means to our national security to give up our soft power. We're no longer helping struggling nations in Africa. China, or worse, terrorists, are filling the vacuum. I wonder how many of those African countries will be named in next year's threat assessment. Thanks to DOJ, the men we paid to guard the most vicious ISIS terrorists in the world in Syria walked off the job. Do you think we'll see their names in this document next year? Elon Musk fired the people who maintain our nuclear weapons. Does that feel like a threat to you? Apparently, all of this mayhem is cheered by the President of the United States and by 20-somethings with laptops and nicknames like Big Balls. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that Moscow and Beijing and Tehran and Pyongyang cannot believe their luck. Now we come to learn that people in the most dangerous and sensitive jobs on the planet put extremely specific pre-decisional discussions about a military attack on signal which could be intercepted by the Russians and the Chinese. Everyone here knows that the Russians or the Chinese could have gotten all of that information, and they could have passed it on to the Houthis, who easily could have repositioned weapons and altered their plans to knock down planes or sink ships. I think that it's by the awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now. The two general officers sitting at the table and the people who work for all of you know that if they had set up and participated in the Signal chat, they would be gone. And they know that there's only one response to a mistake of this magnitude. You apologize, you own it, and you stop everything until you can figure out what went wrong and how it might not ever happen again. But that's not what happened. The Secretary of Defense responded with a brutal attack on the reporter who did not ask to be on the Signal chain. Yesterday, our former colleague Mike Waltz did the same in the White House and then went on Fox to call Jeff Goldberg a loser. What do you think the people who work for you are seeing and learning from that? Now, except for that last part, almost all of the mayhem slowly eroding our safety, our standing, and our security in the world has largely happened outside the IC. If you had a part in that, and I suspect you did, I thank you. I'll say it now and I'll say it again every time we see each other over the next couple of years. You must protect the thousands of patriots who go to work every day under you to keep us safe. You need to go to work every day thinking about their morale, their well-being, and their protection. I've done intelligence oversight for more than a decade. It's my job to ask you the tough questions and maybe even make you uncomfortable. But John, I don't ever walk through your lobby and look at those 140 stars on the wall without choking up over the fact that men and women far better than I will give their lives to keep us safe. There's about a dozen people in this room who know all their stories, and you know and I know that many of the men and women who have stars on that wall died because of bad decisions or poor judgment by their leaders. We've all worked together before, and recent events notwithstanding, we need you to succeed. Your people and our safety requires you to succeed. I really hope you do. But let me say now that if some overcaffeinated 20-year-old succeeds in firing your linguists or your mathematicians or your paramilitary officers, if you shut down some unit because Steve Bannon or Seb Gorka doesn't like it, America will be less safe and people will get hurt. And I and this committee and history will be very unkind.
Congressman Hines was absolutely right. Our enemies are getting more confident. Our government is falling apart both domestically and internationally. We're losing allies and aligning with adversaries who are eager to betray us. Now, they know they can access our most sensitive information just by sending Mike Waltz a text every now and then. Maybe he makes a mistake and accidentally includes their name in a group chat. It's unbelievable. And what's even more ridiculous is the lack of accountability. The Democrats are pushing for accountability, but when they try to bring it up, Fox just cuts away.
General Cruz, are you familiar with this system?
I'm not wearing my glasses at the moment, but...
Well, I'll help you out. This is an SA-3 anti-aircraft system.
Correct.
Are you familiar with this next system?
I am.
What is it?
I'm going to have to ask you.
It's an SA-6.
I'm going to guess that...
This is also an advanced anti-aircraft system, is it not?
It is. It was used widely in the Balkans in the 90s, correct?
And the Houthis also have this system, don't they?
They certainly do.
And they've employed it against our aircraft, have they not?
They have attempted to, correct.
I spent my life in service to this country. I deployed 3 times to combat in service to this nation. I learned in that time in service that responsibility is core to leadership. You accept responsibility when things go wrong. You admit mistakes. You set the standard from the very top. It is completely outrageous to me that administration officials come before us today with impunity, no acceptance of responsibility, excuse after excuse after excuse, while we send our men and women downrange to do incredibly difficult, incredibly dangerous things on our behalf. And yet, nobody is willing to come to us and say this was wrong. This was a breach of security and we won't do it again. It is outrageous and it is a leadership failure, and that's why Secretary Hegseth, who undoubtedly transmitted classified, sensitive operational information via this chain, must resign immediately. There can be no fixes, there can be no corrections until there is accountability, and I'm calling on the administration to move forward with accountability.
What Fox cut away from was Congressman Jim Crow's call for Pete Hegseth to resign, which he absolutely should. If he doesn't resign, he should be fired. And if that doesn't happen, he should be impeached and removed from office because he's unfit for the job. He's either too dangerous, unqualified, or simply too incompetent. I don't know. Maybe he was drunk. That was actually a question raised during the hearing, and of course, the Republican response was exactly what you'd expect.
I want to talk to is Secretary of Defense Hegseth. And a lot of questions were brought up regarding his drinking habits in his confirmation hearing. To your knowledge, do you know whether Pete Hegseth had been drinking before he leaked classified information?
I don't have any knowledge of Secretary Hegseth's personal habits.
Director Radcliffe, same question. Yes or no?
No, I'm going to answer that. I think that's an offensive line of questioning. The answer is no. I find it interesting that you want to... I'm going to answer. You asked me a question. You want an answer?
No, listen.
You don't want to focus on the good work that the CIA is doing, that the intelligence community...
Director, I reclaim my time. Director, I reclaim my time. Here, I have huge respect for the CIA, huge respect for our men and women in uniform. But this was a question that's on the top of minds of every American, right? He stood in front of a podium in Europe holding a drink. So, of course, we want to know if his performance is compromised. If people were asking if the General Austin was compromised because of a heart issue,
was his performance compromised because of a successful strike?
Back. Mr. I bring my
you want to know? You want to talk about accepting responsibility? Do you think you should accept responsibility for a successful strike to make Americans safer? You want to focus on?
I reclaim my time.
How is that an inappropriate question? A big part of the discussion around Pete Hegseth's appointment was whether he was capable of doing the job. Pete Hegseth actually had to make a promise, not just any promise, but a pinky promise, that he wouldn't drink on the job. So now, as everything falls apart rapidly, I don't think it's unreasonable to question whether he was sneaking a few gin and tonics, texting his buddies, and sending emojis about blowing things up. Really professional people we have in our government, huh? It's not a ridiculous question. In fact, it's the right one. I'm surprised it hasn't been asked sooner. And the defense from Trump's team? Well, I'm not familiar with it. Just like when Tulsi Gabbard couldn't recall something, because she couldn't recall that she was lying. What does that tell us about whether Pete was hitting the bottle? Probably the case. The criticism didn't stop there. It kept going in the next clip.
I'm going to speak to you specifically about the fact that you have spent much of your 40 days talking about the importance of making sure that we don't reveal classified information, making sure that we don't leak information. You're a former battalion commander in the Army. I don't think that you would have necessarily appreciated the kind of leaking of information that I believe absolutely did happen in this signal channel and is worthy of a further investigation. In fact, this committee established something called 50 U.S.C. 3235A, and this committee, on a bipartisan, apartisan basis, requires you, the DNI, to swiftly notify Congress and the Intelligence Committee if you're aware of any sort of significant unauthorized disclosure or compromise of classified information, which I would argue this has all of the markings of being that. And so if you, as the DNI, see such a thing anywhere within your organization's purview, you have the obligation to begin an investigation to report back to us on that. Would this seem to qualify to you as something worthy of that investigation?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. In this situation, Secretary Hegseth has the
Yes or
classification
no?
and
You are the
declassification
DNI.
authority over DOD information.
This chat did not have the auspice of being a DOD chat. There's no such thing as labeling it as DOD. This was a chat amongst a great variety of people, and you, according to our law that we passed here bipartisanly, have an obligation when you think there has been a tangible, significant leak of information to instigate an investigation. Do you not think it's important to do such a thing?
Well, the National Security Council is investigating
no?
this inadvertent leak. And again, I point to Secretary Hegseth as having the classification.
I would argue that
classification
Secretary
authority.
Hegseth, if he had the dignity that he needs to have, should be walking his resignation in, because I believe that his probably is heading toward being relieved of his duty based on what I think are significant and illegal leaks, most likely.
There are so many important questions that need answers. And I want to see the Democrats take a stand, push for action, and demand accountability. They need to be out in the streets, standing in front of the Capitol, and pushing for as many hearings as possible. We need more information and full transparency. The same transparency Donald Trump falsely claims to prioritize in his administration. We deserve to know the truth. And if you're on board with that and want to support independent media, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a blue heart in the comments if you made it to the end. Until next time, I'll see you soon.